On today's episode of Huber Syndrome, we're going over some 2020 horror games. Hey everyone, welcome to the show. Last week we had some horror movies and shows to go over that came out in this year of 2020. Now we're looking back at some of the horror games that came out this year. Full disclosure from the top, we're leaving a few out. Phasmophobia is early access. You're not gonna see it here. Last of Us Part 2 and Resident Evil 3 we've talked about all year, so also you will not see those here. So let's dive into what we will see. First up, barely making this list, but I'm too obsessed to omit it. Ghost of Tsushima Legends. Ghost of Tsushima, easily Game of the Year contender. And then out of nowhere, they doubled down on being a GOTY contender by releasing the free update featuring Legends mode. This is a 2 to 4 player co-op mode for Ghost of Tsushima. And while it's not 100% horror, it still has horror atmosphere. You're fighting some Oni demons. There's like faceless zombies everywhere. There's crazy things in the sky and blood rituals. So the whole thing has a horror atmosphere, and it is just an excellent way to play Ghost of Tsushima. If you have been putting this off, dive in immediately. I cannot recommend this enough. There are 2-player story missions, which are really fun. And when you level up your gear enough, you can raise the difficulty, which adds really unique modifiers to missions. There are times when you are tethered to your partner, or you have to use different elements to fight the enemies. I'm just so impressed with the amount of teamwork and coordination you need in these modes. The story missions, there's some really cool platforming where depending on which element you have, that person needs to jump and create the platform. There are enemies that are immune to certain elements and you can only have one at a time, so each person needs to coordinate that. And then even sometimes you're linked to each other, and if you get too far away from each other, you start losing health. So I'm just so impressed with the co-op and the teamwork needed. Ghost of Tsushima Legends, the gift that keeps on giving. Boot it up if you haven't. It is excellent. Next on the list, kind of a smaller one, I wanted to give a shout out to Return OneWay Trip. I'd never heard of this game actually, so it was gifted to me on Steam. I just really like the look of the game. It is a retro side-scroller, and you are 5 teenagers camping in the woods, and then some mysterious stuff goes down. You scavenge for items, and there's some light puzzle solving. Nothing too complicated yet. Doesn't look like you can fully fight back against enemies, but I haven't really encountered much. It's more along the lines of a visual novel adventure-style game. The subject matter is pretty intense, so be warned, it can hit pretty hard. I haven't finished the game, I'm only about 4 chapters in, but it is definitely about relationships and human connections. And it's just really cool. I really like the visuals and the look of it. I will say the game pauses a little too much. Every time the character has something to say or think, the game kind of takes control away from you. But I'm just really intrigued by the atmosphere of it. It actually got me in the mood to watch some Japanese horror, so it's kind of a double recommendation here. I watched Perfect Blue last night, which is also extremely disturbing, but an anime film I had not fully seen all the way through, and it holds up. It is hard to watch. It is so intense, but Return OneWay Trip got me in the mood for some Japanese horror. Perfect Blue, double dose, out of control. Then next on the list, Made of Scare. When Made of Scare came out, it caught my eye, but it passed me by. That rhymes intentionally. And there's no better time to check it out than in the month of October when Halloween is right around the corner, and I'm glad I did. This is another horror one where you're kind of walking around vulnerable style. I'm only a few hours into this one, so I haven't got any weapons yet, but I have encountered this Mr. X style character out of control, this low-rent Mr. X econo-tyrant wreaking havoc. Very intimidating presence, but I really like this game too. You are searching for things in an old hotel in the late 1800s, and there's just this haunting music everywhere. There's this vibe that there could be sirens. I don't exactly know what's going on, but the residents of the hotel are now faceless creatures. It's just a really good atmosphere, and I really like it so far. Made of Scare.
Live for the child, like you said. Find the others.
And we definitely saved the best for last. Amnesia Rebirth. A few months ago, I went back and revisited this series, and I'm glad I did, because now here we are with the newest entry in this series, Amnesia Rebirth. Oh god. If you haven't played any Amnesias, stop what you are doing, click out of this video, and play them immediately. Especially the first and the third one. These games are just so exhausting in the best way. Specifically the Dark Descent and Rebirth we'll be talking about today. A Machine for Pigs is just okay, but you know how I like to be caught up in the series lore and the franchise as a whole. But the Dark Descent and Rebirth are just so exhausting. You're so vulnerable and they're so scary all the time. You're trying to manage your resources. In Rebirth, you get these matches and they're just so fun to use because you're comboing them into lanterns and candles and torches on the wall. Just getting the most out of each match feels so good. And I just really don't want to say too much about this game because the less you know, the better. But it will keep you off balance. It will keep you terrified. It is similar to the original in terms of pacing. You are going around the environment, finding clues, solving puzzles, avoiding danger, and I can't stress enough, it's just so intense. This is the one you should be playing this Halloween. This is it. Highest recommendation. We always talk about the best of horror every year. We always talk about classics, Resident Evil, Silent Hill. It's always the same ones, but now we have a brand new Amnesia to dive into. I can't recommend it enough. If I were to recommend one horror game this year, this is it. Buckle up, turn off the lights, turn up the volume, and prepare. You will be scared. So that's it for the episode. Those are some new horror games from 2020. Those all came out this year. I recommend definitely Ghost of Tsushima Legends and Amnesia Rebirth. Those are the top two. And the other two are really fun if you already played everything and you're desperate, you're looking for horror. Made of Scare and Return. Super interesting, great atmosphere for horror games. That's what it's all about. I'm at Michael P. Huber. We are Easy Allies, and we'll see you next week.